it is Jen, and I have a card share today, and I'm also going to go over some of the techniques I used on this card in a little bit of detail. I'm really pleased with how this came out. The initial thing that I wanted to do is I saw a tutorial online, and I'm going to link it below, and it is just making like silk roses. This was the first one that I did, and you actually sew them. I use seam binding, but the tutorial, she sews it on a specific type of fabric, and she shows in detail. You just make a 5-spoke flower where you actually sew through the material, but I actually did that on the paper, and then you weave the seam binding around to make the rosette. And so this was my first attempt at doing that, and then I wanted to do it on a card. So these two little roses right here were hand sewn through. I layered all of my papers here, except for I did not attach them to the card. And then I used button thread to make my 5 little stitches that you then weave the seam binding through. If you watch her tutorial, it's very clear. If anybody wants me to do a tutorial specifically on these and how I did it on the paper, I'd be happy to do that. But what I did is I used white seam binding and made the 2 rosettes, so they are sewn right into the paper. And then I dyed them with the Heidi swap sprays, and I used like a 1-to-3 ratio. So I used, I just remember when I sprayed it on my mat, I did 2 sprays of the blush and 6 sprays of the white to really make this a pale blush color. And then I just took a paintbrush and kind of sopped up the sprays and just patted it on the seam binding roses, and it absorbs it right up. It dries just a tiny bit later, and then I also added some gesso. So let me do a close-up of these rosettes so that you can see them. So it was really a lot of fun, and when I had done them on the tag, I had sewn the 5 little stitches underneath with the seam binding, but when you're doing it on the paper, I found it much easier to use the button thread and then to weave the seam binding through the button thread. You just basically go up and down every other stitch. But like I said, I'd be happy to do a tutorial if anyone wants that. And I used the Cashmere Dame paper. I really wanted to use this floral piece of paper, which is one of my all-time favorites. And I also wanted to share with you guys, this is my latest obsession. It's the Memento Angel Pink ink. So I used that to outline all of my papers and these little flowers, which I am going to talk about next. And these little flowers here, and there's one up here. I use the Spellbinders Donna Salzar Rose Creations, and so I used the smallest die, and I cut out 2 of those. Again, I'll do a close-up here for you. So I cut out 2 of those out of the pattern paper, and then this little center is just a really small punch that I have. And I did curl the petals a little bit and ink the edges. So I like the way that those came out. And then these leaves here, I'll tell you how I created the paper, but I also used the little leaf die from this kit. I used the small one and cut it out and did the embossing, the dry embossing, and then use those. And so for those, I used this piece of paper, and a few nights ago I was playing, this is I think that I got this paper at Hobby Lobby, and it was It was like handmade white paper. I believe that's what it was called. But what I was doing, I was playing around with gesso and paints, and to get this effect, which was kind of just a throwaway piece of, it was a mistake. I put the paint and the gesso on the paper, and then I laid a piece of magazine that I had just ripped out on there and brayered it over the paints and just let it sit for a few minutes, and then you can peel the back of the paper off and you get this, the ink transfers. And then I let that dry. I think I didn't like the way it was coming out because I had let it sit too long and it ripped some of the paper off here. But I had let that dry and then sent it through my Cuttlebug and with my Rose Anna Griffin embossing folder. I actually may have done that first. I don't even remember in which order. But I just love this color. I believe it's the patina color from Folk Art. So I just threw it in I have a bin of papers that I've made or altered. So I threw it in there, and I love the way that the leaves came out using this. So that's kind of how I made that, and I was initially going to throw it away, and I'm so glad that I didn't. And then these little chipboard words, I kind of did a little altering of just different items I had on hand. I love these chipboard words. I've had these for a long, long time. I forget who they're even made by. However, all of the words that are left on here are really words that I wouldn't necessarily use. And I just, I always thought, ugh, I only liked half of the words that were on here and I didn't want to throw them away. Well, I had picked up a while ago these Maggie Holmes gold embossed words. Sorry for the glare there. So the little letters are raised up. But these small ones on the bottom fit perfectly on top of here. So I put them on there, cut it out, filed down the edges around. And then I used my Wink of Stella on the sides and a little bit of the Memento ink. And I'm really happy with how those came out as well. So that's how I made those. And then this is, let's see, this is a one of my clip art images that I got offline and just used a Spellbinders die. And then I ran this trim around there, and all I did to do that, I had an extra little piece of it here, is I took some score tape and just ran it along the back, and then I took the score tape off, and then I was able to maneuver it and bend it all the way around, and it kind of cups up around the image, which I really, really like. So that's how I did that. So this card took me like forever because, oh, I wanted to show you guys, I knew there's one more thing. These little pink roses, I just wanted to share these guys with you because I like them so much. I got these during the half off sale at Hobby Lobby. They're the spare parts, but they're this beautiful, beautiful blush color, and they're finished off really nicely. So I put a couple of those up here. This is a vintage, or not a vintage, but it was a vintage looking button that I picked up at Joann's. But here's little pink rosettes, and I put a little doily back there and just some bling. And there's a couple more rosettes over there. But yes, I really, really like those. I used a couple of Spellbinders dies here, and then this little pink sticking out here is the same die that I used for the floral piece here. I just cut off the top and bottom and expanded them, and then the piece I had left I cut in the middle and stretched that out to the sides. So again, it took me a little while to put this together. I want to sit down and just make a couple more that are exactly like this because I really like the way that it came out. And I know it wouldn't take me as long to do it now that I kind of have it figured out. Now these flowers too, the other thing is, I do think I'm going to pick up, if you look in her video, she has some fabric. It's almost, reminds me a little bit of cross stitch fabric. that I think it would be easier, possibly, to make a bunch of these on that fabric, and then you could just glue them down wherever you wanted. I mean, it was kind of neat to sew them right into the cardstock, but for easiness, it would definitely be a little bit quicker just to make a bunch of them on that type of woven fabric that she uses. And then the inside, this was a piece of white trim that I dyed in the same fashion as I did these. I just made a puddle of the dyed ink and then brushed it on with a paintbrush, and then also put a little bit of gesso on there to highlight some of those roses, and then just made a little sentiment tag to go in that pocket. This paper is so, so pretty. And then just put my little card on the back. I don't get a ton of visits over to my blog. I really use my blog as a way of keeping track of a lot of my favorite projects that I've made, and I can go back and look at them. But if anyone wants to check out my blog, there it is. So that's all I have for you guys today. I hope you like the card. If anyone wants any tutorials on the techniques, just let me know. And you guys have a super great day. Bye-bye.